Answers? I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work. When you go to church. When you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. You take the blue pill, the story ends, you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe.
It's time to spill the tea on Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and this fiasco involving South African immigrants. A lot of people don't know all the little history and moving pieces, and I'm going to try to tell you the story in 2 minutes. At the end of World War II, when the Mustache Man, as they call him here, was defeated, many people who loved that ideology and believed in racial supremacy and had a lot of pseudo-scientific theories about a master race, they found a home in South Africa. There are streets named after German military leaders, and up till very recently, the Mustache Man's birthday was celebrated and people would commonly give the salute. That was the place where Elon Musk was raised, and many of Elon Musk's friends who came over here and are very prominent leaders in the tech world, including Peter Thiel. Now, what happens is when all these white supremacists moved to South Africa, they took away citizenship from the black people of South Africa, the indigenous people, and they moved them into little ghettos called Bantustans. And they tried to pretend that they had little independent societies there in these overcrowded, under-resourced ghettos. And it took years, but in the 80s, a revolution happened and the apartheid system was finally overthrown. Now, at that time, Elon Musk's family left because what had made them rich with their emerald diamond mines and cheap labor and racially structured society had been taken apart. So they left. Now, even after this revolution happened, over 70% of the wealth, as you could imagine, still resided with the white colonizers who owned just about all of the land. So having a reform to make things equal for everyone would be a complicated judicial process, but it systematically took place and is still happening to this day. You could imagine how difficult it would be to unravel that terrible system and to create something fair for everyone. Now, one of the laws in South Africa is any international investment, any big company that goes to work there, they have to be sure that 30% of the company has equity in people of South Africa, black people, marginalized people, and there are several ways they could do that. But Elon Musk and Starlink didn't like that rule, and they resisted. In other words, if Starlink was to open a business in South Africa and have offices, they would have to have at least 30% of the company black South Africans. Instead of complying with that, like Microsoft and every other big tech firm, Elon Musk started to use X to put out these crazy claims of a white genocide, things that the United Nations and every other serious human rights group said is a damaging lie. perpetrated by the extreme right. In reality, there's a lot of crime in South Africa, but it affects everyone in every race proportionally and is not instigated by the government over racial animosity. But Elon Musk and Donald Trump are sending that message to the world. All propaganda requires a victim. And if you want to build a system of white supremacy here in the United States or in South Africa, you need a victim. So Elon Musk has been using X, and Trump is throwing around the genocide word and bringing in white people from South Africa and telling the world he's saving them from a genocide. Since all this happened with the tariffs, Lesotho, another African nation, succumbed to Trump's wishes, and they allowed Starlink to get a contract. And now South Africa is trying to appease Elon Musk to have other ways that he could do business in South Africa and still support the country's transitional goals. The bottom line to remember, these immigrants coming to the United States are not refugees from violence or genocide. They're refugees from equality. They want to leave equality and go to white supremacy.
Have you ever wondered why so many music stars start off normal and then end up satanic? It's not random, it's not style, it's not art, it's a pattern. Look at Doja Cat, she was just a sweet girl from the valley. Sam Smith? Watch his latest shows, Justin Timberlake's last video. You think that was just creative expression? No, it's something deeper. And when I started noticing it, I said to myself, this is really tripping me out. Now here's what went wrong. I spoke to people in the music business, people who've been in it for decades, and they told me, plain and simple, the frequency of music changed. In the early 1940s, they allegedly switched it from a natural tone to something else, a different megahertz, a darker frequency, one that doesn't just play in your ears, it messes with your mind. It can hypnotize, influence, control. Now ask yourself, why would they do that? Because the music isn't just music anymore, it's a tool.
This is just a theory, not a fact.
I made a mistake. I looked to see what the CCOT prison in El Salvador looked like. And you can see it. It's pretty plain on Google Maps, even with our non-classified level of resolution. You're going to go to Tecoluca, El Salvador, and you're going to look directly west of the city. And you'll see an industrial place that is labeled CECOT. It's a Centro something. I'm sorry, I don't speak good Spanish, but it's the Center for Holding People Who Are Terrorists is basically what it says. And I looked at it, and my father was involved with prisons for a while. I'm somewhat familiar with what prisons look like. The outside looks like a prison. It's got the guard towers. It's got the double levels of fencing. It's set aside from major population centers. It's all as you would expect. But there is not a single yard. There is nowhere for these people to get outside. But that's not the scary part. The horrible part is that this is something like 6 big buildings with a bunch of smaller service buildings around them. 2 of them look like they could be trash incinerators. Way bigger than incinerators would need to be able to take care of the trash generated by a few thousand soldiers. That's still not the most distressing part. If you look at that set of buildings in the central north section, you're going to see the only color on the entire property. Everything is gray and silver and black. But that top center building, it's several buildings in a little square, and in the middle of that square, is some sort of a liquid mess. And that liquid mess is shades of middle to dark reds. And they're in the same kind of patterns that you might see around a slaughterhouse floor. And there's an underground passage that comes out on the east side of that. It comes out from underneath it. It's a road. I don't know what those things are. I can tell you what they look like. The arrangement of the buildings even looks like the arrangement of the buildings at Auschwitz. It's not okay. And this is where we've sent Kilmar. I say we because we, the American people, stood for him to lose his rights to due process because of an accusation that he might be a member of a gang. An accusation without a trial, without even a charge, just an accusation. And he's not the only one to be sent there. We sent a 19-year-old who had no problems, no reason to be deported. Sent a 19-year-old there. This is not okay. It's time to stand up. And I encourage you, if you have the stomach for it, to look up the CECOT facility in El Salvador and take a close look. Tell me what you see. I'd like to hear what you see there. What I see is going to make it hard for me to sleep tonight. It's time to stand up and say this is not okay.
I'd like to talk today a little bit about who, or maybe prove to some of you people in the audience that we have already been taken over, and it's not something that's going to happen, it's already happened. And we need to help you to where you can see that you have been taken over, and maybe clarify who took you over and why. Dean asked me to talk about the common law today, and that would be the main theme of what we're going to speak about. I would like to say that a lot of people have made a lot of assumptions over the years. You live your life with lots and lots of assumptions. Most of them are wrong, and we'll talk about some assumptions here. I have some books here that date back. Most people here, I think, have heard of John Locke. John Locke wrote a series of 12 books. I think it's 12 books, 13 books. A couple hundred years ago, the founding fathers of this nation used the John Locke books when they created this country. John Locke, if you get his books and read them, this one's called The Reasonableness of Christianity. And the one theme that is very interesting in the John Locke commentaries, and I would recommend everybody here get a set of these, okay, is that the law called common law was a law that Jesus brought to earth and gave to man. It is the law that God set down through Jesus. And so common law, if you understand what common law really is, okay, is, according to John Locke, the law of God that you're supposed to be living. Now, this is intriguing because many, many years ago, after the Christian religion got established, the peasants in England were upset because they wanted their common law rights. I'll see if I can speed this up a little bit. They surrounded the castle because Christianity had swept Europe. They surrounded the castle and they threatened to kill the Queen of England and the King of England if they didn't get their common law rights. Because all men are created equal. They wanted these rights. Well, the Queen was outnumbered, surrounded, and she knew she was going to die that day, so she surrendered. And she signed the treaty, the Magna Carta, which guaranteed the common law to the people. Okay? But the Queen's never been beat, and she wanted to get back the power that she knew that she was entitled to have because of her royal family and her birth. And so they hacked out a 1 mile square piece of land, put statutory law in this land, and got all the people who lived all over England to admit that they were British and subjects of the mile square. We have treaties that show that the English crown financed both sides of the Revolutionary War and the War of Independence. They created the 10 mile square, just like she created the 1 mile square. It was part of the conspiracy. Abe Lincoln was elected President of the United States. I do not believe he was ever President of the United States of America. The President of the United States was somebody only in charge of 10 miles square. He was never the president of this combined nation. There was two presidents during this period of time. There was a U.S. president, and there was President of the United States of America, and there was two White Houses, two First Ladies. And the Civil War was a war against the 10 miles square, which fought the rest of the nation. The wrong side won. The reason the wrong side won was it was the Queen of England who came over with her West Indies Trading Corporation and brought the Africans here and sold the slaves to the settlers, making the settlers participate in slavery. I guess he didn't make them, they volunteered. But in common law, the crime for slavery is you become a slave. This is one of the reasons the NAFTA organization has created a complete slave nation out of Mexico. So the penalty for creating a slave nation, us people in this country being the taskmasters of said slave nation, is for us to now become a slave nation at a worse level than ever before. That's what's planned, I believe, for us at this time. Being that common law was the law of God, when the founding fathers created the so-called Constitution of the United States of America, the people who lived in this 10-mile square area were part of the Republic of Virginia, or also known as the Commonwealth of Virginia. They were upset because they were bringing the statutory law, the law of the ocean, upon the land. And we had just fought a war to get rid of the Queen's law of the ocean, known as statutory law. They went through all this to get rid of this law, and now they're bringing it back and they're putting it in our backyards. We don't want to be regulated by statutory law. So they threatened to kill the people that were the founding fathers. They had pitchforks, they had muskets, they were going to really get quite ugly. And so there was a compromise reached, and it was called the Seventh Amendment. And the Seventh Amendment was put in the Constitution of the United States of America, guaranteeing that common law would be preserved in all controversies which ever exceed $20. Now, that's an interesting thing. It's right there in plain sight. The patriots run around saying, I'm not a U.S. citizen, your 14th Amendment's a conspiracy, etc., etc., etc. What happens when you go to court and say, well, I must be a U.S. citizen? I know I'm not. And I say, I'm a U.S. citizen, I invoke the Seventh Amendment because this controversy exceeds $20. Well, they cannot put common law in a statutory courtroom because statutory law is satanic. Some can call it the law of the dragon. That works. Seeing as how the United States Corporation is the Dragon Corporation. Now, Adolf Hitler didn't cancel common law, nor did he cancel the United States of America. If you go to the courthouse, every single property, every single deed that is supposedly BLM for a service is all still in the name of the United States of America. When I gave an oath, when I joined the Navy, during the U.S. Navy, by the way, during the Vietnam conflict, it was to honor and uphold the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, domestic and foreign. And Richard Milhouse Nixon got up and said he was going to defend the Constitution of the United States, no of America, against all enemies, domestic and foreign. Was he my president? Absolutely not. Was he the president of Alabama, Georgia, Florida? Absolutely not. So he was a domestic enemy, a corporate takeover. And I committed treason as I walked out the door to go to boot camp. Treason whose penalty is death by hanging, death by firing squad. Did they commit a sin by murdering all those young men on the Vietnam War? Absolutely not. Every one of those servicemen was guilty of treason. When you launch a war, you have to make sure you wash your hands, like Pilate did before he sentenced Jesus. The young men that landed on the beach at D-Day, what happened? They landed on the beach. There was no resistance, miles on both sides of the machine gun turrets. But we unload the men right there in front of the machine guns. They die like dogs. Is it a sin? No, they were guilty. And innocence is no excuse. Ignorance is no excuse. So they get us to participate in crimes so that we can participate in the penalty. And quite personally, I'm tired of the penalty and their wicked crime. So Abe Lincoln shelved the United States of America. He took that government and shelved it. And this is why the President of the United States has to be a native-born American, because a native-born American is automatically a citizen of the United States of America.
Have you wondered why The Simpsons shows something and then out of nowhere it actually happens? That's not some lucky guess. That's what they call predictive programming. See, movies, cartoons, shows, they don't just predict the future. They show it to you before it happens, because they have to. That's part of the deal. It's not just entertainment. It's warning, hidden in plain sight. There's this scene in Captain America, right? Times Square. On the screen in the background, there's a mask, a Corona bottle sign, and that spiky little virus symbol. Before any pandemic was even a thing, what are the odds? But here's where it gets deep. Why show it at all? Why put the plan out there? Because, according to some beliefs, evil forces are allowed to mess with this world as long as they tell us first. A preacher once said, Jesus told the devil, "You can have this world, do what you want, but you must tell them first." And that's what they've been doing. Hiding truth in fake stories, making it look like just fiction. So when it all happens, we don't question it. We just say, that's weird, and move on. But it's not weird, it's planned, it's a rule, and they've been showing us for years. We just didn't want to see it.
This is just a theory, not a fact.
Donald Trump is not the President of the United States. Yes, he was elected to the office, and he sits in the White House. But he's not actually running anything. If you look at several of his last interactions with the press, the answer to most questions from Donald is, I don't know. They're occasionally interspersed with, you have to talk to somebody else, like Scott B. over trade, or you need to talk to my lawyers. My lawyers decide how to do that. I got great lawyers. Pam Bondi's a great lawyer. But Donald's not in charge. Donald is an incompetent old man. He's a narcissist who has lost his mental faculties, and he is in dementia. Period. He'd rather be playing golf. He signs documents, and he has no idea what he's signing. So that being said, the question is, who is running the country? Well, I think in one area, the domestic area, the emphasis on immigration, that's pretty obvious. It's Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, who speaks a lot more than any deputy chief of staff I've ever seen in the past, is the one who's driving the train here, folks. He's the one who came up with separating children from their parents in the last administration. He's the one that wants to empower ICE. Kristi Noem is his little handmaiden. And Miller is the one that's running it. Now, Stephen Miller is basically a little white supremacist racist. There's no question about that. Odd for a Jewish boy, but that's what it is. And this country is going to suffer. We're not going to have a sensible policy of securing our borders, providing immigrants with a path to citizenship and naturalization, a sane, humane method for dealing with people seeking asylum. No, we can't do that because the MAGA crowd wants somebody to beat up on, someone to victimize. And Stephen Miller is more than willing to do that for some reason. So here's the bottom line. We're going to be faced with this. We're going to continue to have it. Trump's not running the show. And on this area, it's Stephen Miller. Now, I think, honestly, a lot of different people are grabbing off their little pieces of power and doing what they can. You know, Pam Bondi's trying to be in charge of justice, and Pete Hegseth, God knows what he's doing over in the military, but each one's trying to divvy it up. But this is Stephen Miller's area. And Stephen, until that particular pustulant carbuncle is cauterized from the ass of the body politic, will be running our internal policies.
The lack of curiosity about it is one of the scariest things about new generations of kids. Because look at this. We are not questioning that. And why doesn't it go all the way up?
Exactly. Let's start with rockets. Watch any launch and you'll notice. They never go straight up. Every single one curves following a parabolic arc. They claim it's the Earth's curvature. But why do these rockets conveniently drop into the ocean? Out of sight, out of mind. The truth? They can't get past a certain height. Interestingly, even the Bible talks about the firmament, a structure dividing the waters above from the waters below. Some believe this is literal, a dome above the earth with water on the other side. Ever tried zooming in on stars with a telescope? Looks like it's in water, right? Others think it's metaphorical, just our atmosphere. But if that's true, let's talk about Operation Fishbowl. In 1962, the U.S. government detonated nukes in the sky. Officially, it was to test atmospheric reactions. But what if it was something else? What if they were trying to break through this barrier? And let's not forget, they keep tweaking the Earth's shape. First it's a sphere, then it's an oblate spheroid. Now it's pear-shaped, They can't keep their story straight because they're reverse engineering answers to fit their model. So is there a barrier above us? And if rockets can't leave, what else are they hiding?
This is just a theory, not a fact.
So I need everybody to hear this, including Trump supporters, because this has nothing to do with whether I'm a Democrat or you're a Republican. What's happening right now affects every single one of us. I'm going to talk about two different bills that were just slipped into the House budget bill, okay? Affects every one of us. The first one are the SNAP benefit cuts. I made a video about a year ago because I've studied extensively Project 2025. I've studied extensively how people are being brainwashed to buy into Project 2025 by people like Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro, okay? So in the SNAP benefits, they're cutting it. They're cutting SNAP benefits by $120 billion over a decade. Now, here's how they're cutting it. You're only permitted to apply for SNAP benefits until your child turns 7 years old. That's a second grader. I want everybody to just walk into a second grade classroom. Now, there are so many reasons why somebody might need SNAP benefits to get them by. One of the most important ones is because you're a single parent, or maybe you're even grandparents. The parents are out of the picture and you're living on, retirement benefits. It could be any number of reasons. And these children, we have hungry children right now, even with the current SNAP benefit system. We have hungry children. And we don't have all that many high-paying jobs. We have a lot of manual labor, low wage, no benefit jobs. Well, these Republicans are cutting SNAP benefits, but they're giving two exclusions, okay? The first exclusion, if you're married and your child turns 7, you can continue to get SNAP benefits. And then they're upping the work requirements, except with the exception, if you're married, the new work requirements do not apply. Why is this important? When you read Project 2025, their goal is to turn this into a Christian nation under a patriarchy. It's their goal. There's over 35 people at high-level administration with Donald Trump that were architects that are part of Project 2025 and making it happen. And in Project 2025, it forces women to get married at a very young age and start bearing children. So this is integrated into this new bill. It makes it very hard to be a single mother and to remain single. It forces you into a marriage you probably don't want. And Trump supporters, you've got single mothers in your households. I know that you do. This is why Charlie Kirk is so dangerous. College campuses everywhere. He integrates into every single debate how women should just graduate from high school and get married right away and start having babies. There's footage everywhere. He discourages women from getting higher education and going into fields like being a scientist, and he does that at every single college campus, and the boys are hearing this message too. So that's the number one bill that was slipped into this budget bill by the House. The second one is what we've already heard of, the selling of 200 million acres of our federal land. Now, when I say our, that means you as a Trump supporter and me. We own 200 acres of this beautiful country. It's protected as federal lands. They want to sell 1/3 of it. 200 million acres. Let me give you a better perspective. That's 10% of all the acres in this entire country. 10% of our land. Okay? Let me give you a different perspective. It's the equivalent of selling off 4 states the size of Arizona. This is the biggest money transfer of wealth we've ever seen under this administration, whether it's with the tax cuts, whether it's with destroying the stock market so they can hurry up and buy and sell and make a quick profit. I mean, this is the biggest transfer of wealth we are seeing right now. And selling off the federal lands is specifically to sell to their rich developers, Trump supporters. That's not you. That's not me. They're selling our land. And I want everybody to think about what Mark Carney of Canada said when he was with President Trump. He said, "Mr. President, I talked to the owners of Canada and we're not for sale." He recognizes that Canadians own that country. This is our federal land that they're selling. I want to go back to the SNAP benefits though, and how this is going to increase the number of children who are hungry, whose single parent, probably a single mother, is stressed. Just to save $135 billion or $120 billion over 10 years, just the corporate tax breaks that the Trump administration is giving is $135 billion a year that we're losing. And we got to make the cut somewhere, so they're making it in SNAP, one of many. We give $3.8 billion a year to Israel, okay? For Trump's tax cuts to the wealthy that are already in place and that are just going to keep getting better, $400 billion a year we're losing as Americans because the wealthy are getting such tax cuts. And instead, we're keeping kids.
And that means you can't rely on the media as it is today either.
Oh, of course not. All the media in this country, radio, television, and print, is all owned by 5 corporations. All of these corporations that own the media are owned and controlled, and members of the Council on Foreign Relations sit on their board of directors. And all journalists know that there's some things you don't write about and you don't talk about because you'll lose your job. And that's where the control is. And that's why they pay anchormen like Dan Rather $2 million a year, because he doesn't question them. He knows that if he goes against them, he's going to lose $2 million a year. Do you think a man that looks pretty and sits in front of a TV camera for the 6 o'clock news is worth $2 million a year? No way. I don't care how long he works and I don't care what he does. There is no job worth $2 million a year. That's why they pay athletes these fantastic salaries. I was listening to the radio the other day. They just contracted to pay one player on one team $6 million a year. Can you believe this?
And why is that?
It's the Roman circus. What does the emperor do when the people become restive, and when the people are asking questions, and when the people don't like the policies of the emperor? He sends them to the circus. He creates a circus. He builds a giant coliseum. And he begins to throw the Christians to the lions. And he has great chariot races and football games and basketball games, all to keep the idiots preoccupied with things that don't mean anything in the scheme of the entire world, so that they don't have the time to learn what the truth is, so they don't ever get smart enough to learn how they're being manipulated, so they don't ever question the emperor. That's why they pay a player on a football team or a baseball team $1 million or $2 million or $3 million a year. It is the Roman circus. I know men who don't know anything in the world except who plays third base for the Mets. And they think that's a great accomplishment. And they meet and pat each other on the back and bond and go have cocktails and talk about what this guy that plays third base for the Mets did in last night's game. It's sad. It's really sad. A nation of people who are willing to send their sons and daughters that they profess that they love to a foreign country to die, and they use the excuse to themselves that they're sending them off to defend our country, and they know damn well that's a lie, are doomed.